Welcome back. Welcome back. Thank you for interrupting your coffee break to join us. Security resilience, it makes the front page of our newspapers far too often. Perhaps to kickstart this session, I will ask you to reach out for your phone once more. Last time today, I promise. Reach out for your phone. And BEREC has cooked up a question, to have your opinion on an important matter. Please, you have it? How secure do you think accounts without multi-factor authentication are? Alors, I'm looking at security expert there. Perhaps I should ask their opinion when they're on stage. I've got the right answer, written on my paper here. Let's leave it a minute. Who has not voted and wants to vote? Who is struggling with his phone? Vincent, you manage? Yeah, that's right, With fiber, they can do everything, Fiber to the table and you can vote in no time. Yeah, I think, this is the answer that I've got on my paper. Apparently, I don't know what security experts say, but it's 50%. So, common sense, good wisdom from the room. It's now a real honor, really, for me to welcome on stage the president of the Ukraine telecom regulator, NCEC, Oleksandr Zhyvotovskyi. Oleksandr, please join me on stage.
Hello, everyone.
Can I just say something important? Oleksandr will share slides will show us slides. Please do not take pictures, and people following online, sorry, you won't have access to them. I really insist that you comply with this instruction. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Oleksandr Zhyvotovskyi, and I'm a head of Ukrainian telecom regulator for quite some time now. I'm very honored to speak to a large audience today. It's not only regulators, not only European Commission, but most importantly, telecom operators, consumer groups, because I think the topics that we're going to discuss today, and I'll show you a few slides, resemble a problem that doesn't have a solution that wouldn't involve the whole, society as a whole. And this is why, that's very symbolic, and I'm very grateful to have, this audience today. So, security, stability, and integrity. As many speakers before me told, just a couple of years ago, 5 years ago, when we were discussing telecoms, it was about fun, about social networks, about being connected to your friends, about new technologies, about industrial development, and all the positive things. And today, I think, and many would agree, we stand at a point where some gloomy times ahead, should I say so. And these items like security and stability become very important. Very important to, I believe, everyone in this room and across the globe. Because it touches everyone, and I'll explain more. The first slide is, we have a war for more than 2 years now. And you see that the war is on 18% of the territory, and that's the current picture. Back in 2022, the northern, eastern regions where the war just ended. And in 2022, our main focus was on rebuilding infrastructure. And you might think about it as well, it's a war, We don't have a war. But when we were discussing, I had this interesting conversation with FCC, with the head of FCC, chairwoman of FCC, and we immediately struck a point where that it always, our efforts on rebuilding infrastructure in the war-torn area resembles what the Americans do to prepare and to mitigate the hurricane effect. So natural disasters. Europe doesn't have hurricanes, but a lot of natural disasters occurs, and a lot of solutions or expertise or outcomes from the experience, what we experience there, come handy to everyone. That was the first kind of wave and the first priority for us to deal with. Second priority was that was my previous presentation for the BEREC. It was about the winter of 2022 when the Russian Federation decided to take electricity out in our country, and we experienced blackouts, and one of the solutions to that was alternative sources of energy, which came as a shock to telecom operators, because with the discussions that we were having at that point were very simple. The telecoms do not work without electricity, and we are not in the business of installing generators and so on and so forth. And the key challenge was to not only to acquire generators, but to manage the flows of fuel, of people that had to run and recharge the generators and so on and so forth. And then when we were discussing with colleagues from Europe, the point immediately arose about the cost of electricity in Europe and the source of electricity and alternative sources of electricity to mitigate the cost. Again, this is the angle that you might want to experience and you might want to look at it. And for example, we introduced on the electricity front, we introduced a regulation where we required telecom operators to maintain service within 3 days of blackouts. It was tough, and we spent a whole year of working with operators in sourcing the generators and making sure they're all installed in the right place. And I can tell now that, to the northeast, there's the city of Kharkiv, a 2 million city before the war, which is being now pounded by the artillery. And they went into a blackout a couple of days ago. I was glad to see that during the blackout, about 50% or more than 60% of mobile base stations were working, partly because mostly because they had alternative sources of energy installed, the batteries in place, the people with the generators, and then the fuel supplies are in place. So it works. And these things happen, and I think this is what we all can learn from. Today, we have should I say the third kind of, we experienced a case which isn't related to war as a whole. It can happen in any country. So just to give you an update on what we're talking about, we have 3 mobile operators. The largest is 24 million subscribers, then 15 and 9 million subscribers. One of those mobile operators on December 12, early in the morning, he went down. There was no service. The disturbances happen. It usually lasts maximum an hour or so. But by the middle of the day, by 12th of December, it was clear that it's massive. And the security service wrote into the operator, and it was clear that it's a massive cyber attack, and everyone was aware that this is very serious. Now, it says that the access to main services was restored in 1 to 4 days, but I can tell you that those were long days. I think at the point in the middle of the second day, the mood was dire, and we were exploring option. What do we do that if it's not installed, if it doesn't come back, if the operator goes down? And there were again, these are kind of stages of shock, but when you get out of it, you get solutions and you get stronger. And this is what I wanted to share with you, what we've done. We're not really experts in cyber, and maybe my colleagues, panelists today will talk more about cyber stuff, but what we were doing as a regulator is to mitigate the effect of a situation when the largest mobile operator goes down. So what happened was approximately, well, 24 million is a total number. Many people had 2 SIM cards, but we estimated that total deficit of subscribers with no service was approximately 15 million. Remember that the other 2 operators had one 15 million and the other 9 million. So the idea of moving at least 15 million of subscribers to the networks of 2 other operators again brought additional red flags to us and brought some counterintuitive measures, like we froze national roaming, we froze mobile number portability because of a fear that the networks of the 2 remaining operators will be overcrowded and will go down as well, which is brought another fear to us. There were QEs to the shops of the mobile operators. I think on that day, on one day, on a single day, the police registered about 1,000, it's not criminal, but administrative offenses when angry people were going to the shops and demanding SIM cards, and the operators didn't have SIM cards. When we were talking to the 2 other operators, we were discussing, you guys, how many SIM cards do you have in store if we need to, to give to people out on the street? The answer was just 1 million for the 2 of them. And as a normal business, any operator, and the mobile operators in this room will agree, they operate on the business as usual norm, and they usually keep, if I remember correctly, about a few weeks supply of sales of the SIM cards. And the whole infrastructure of the operator is built around number of subscribers, and none of the management, none of the mobile operators, none of the telecom operators, I think, never have encountered a situation where they would need to accommodate twice the number of subscribers. So the discussions were difficult, and we were in dire straits, and we were discussing all kinds of options. One of the immediate outcomes or immediate solutions was an agreed plan between 3 operators to transfer frequencies, to make sure that the other 2 operators will be able to absorb influx of new subscribers. I'm proud to say that the operators, agreed the algorithm and the plan to redistribute frequencies in a couple of hours, and that was probably the easiest thing to do. And we make sure we put it on paper and fixed it so everyone would knew what to do. The more difficult item on the agenda were SIM cards. As I said, there is no way the operator can absorb twice as number of subscribers as normally is required. And one of the solutions, and we're still working on that honestly, is to require operators to maintain some kind of reserve of SIM cards and make sure that every system, like billing system, is capable of absorbing such shocks. The other terrible thought was, well, what do we do if the 2 operators go down? then there is no solution to that. If 2 out of 3 mobile operators go down, the remaining one, there is no way it can support or or maintain service. So the focus was we started talking to fixed operators and started making sure everyone was ready to open free Wi-Fi in the malls, in the shopping centers, and make sure that people that lost connection knew where to go and to access and have a call to their friends and families. So these are kind of three items that we work on. And I think one of the difficult one is the SIM cards and the capacity of the mobile infrastructure to absorb sudden influx of a lot of customers. After it all, on the 5th or 6th day, the service mostly was restored, although the effects were reverberating through the system for I think a month. Certain services were down, and like machine to machine and so on. But we asked the operators, so when the fog cleared, we asked, so what do you think? What do you think the outcomes? What are they? What would be the recommendations? Well, of course, the first item on that is you might have guessed is about logins and passwords. This is all where it all started, the cyber attack. And that was number 1 on the replies from the operators. And then the backups, the fear that the backups will not come back, the databases will not restore, and the operator, the 24 million subscriber operator, will lose its customer base where high. And now we have a whole set of discussions on types of technologies for the backups. But this is one of the most important items. Then organizing staff notifications. How do you manage staff when there is no connection? You run a mobile operator and suddenly there is no connection, and you're in a situation where you can't contact your, I think it's 9,000 employees. Yeah, so that's the backup system for the management of staff. Different domains for productive and technological subsistence in the network, like layers in the distribution access rights, audit of the accounts, and access control. This is all related to cyber defenses, but this is kind of the answer of the operators on what they perceive everyone must do to make sure this doesn't happen again. The customers, the consumers, how do you go about this? Well, I guess the biggest outcome for that is make sure that you have 2 SIM cards, at least, both of them working, because sometimes you have a SIM card and it has a time, and by the time you need it, it might not work. If you're a business, it makes sense to have backup plans for telecoms with these 2 operators. Again, then the capacity of your customer service center, the capacity of human resources, and the capacity of the whole infrastructure of the operator. Because when the crisis comes, it's no longer business as usual, and you have to have some kind of reserve or cushion within your infrastructure to make sure that if the stuff happens again, you will be able to absorb both influx of new subscribers and maintain your network and make sure you do your service right. So why am I, the whole main conclusion probably from this incident or from this experience is that first, as I said, it's not about war really. It can happen in any country, and it's rather foolish to assume that that it won't come, because cyber attacks we experience throughout the world, and everyone can expect the enemy at the door. And the whole reason, the main conclusion about it is that there is no longer, the business as usual and the requirement to have, for example, a reserve of SIM cards of a few weeks of sales. That doesn't work, at least if you want to keep the system in your country or the communications in your country running. So the system, and this is again, we do realize this is additional cost for the operators to make sure that the systems are, the billing systems, every system within the infrastructure is capable of managing significantly more data than the current subscriber list. And coming back to where I started, is we believe that security, resilience and stability is something that everyone needs to be aware of, because it all concerns us, because it all concerns, in the end of the day, your relatives, your close ones. And the key to work in any crisis is to make sure you interact with all the stakeholders. This is where I started, where I said that I'm honored to talk a lot to a large audience. It's not about the actions of a regulator by himself that can do much. In the government, you have to maintain and make sure that everyone is on board. The government organizations, the regulators, the telecom operators, and the society as a whole, the consumer rights, because only as a joint effort that can be mitigated. Then there is a word about Ukraine's unique experience, and role model can be a high term, but I think the essence of this is that we do experience things that everyone can learn from, and we are open to share these experiences and to work out things that would benefit any country in this world. Because, as I said, again, and I'll tell it again, the security and resilience of the network is much more important today than it was a couple of years ago. This is it. Thank you.
Thank you, Oleksandr. Thank you for this testimony. Please join us on stage. May I ask Sheila, Kate, Jan, and Jaakko to join me on stage?
Where do I sit?
Oleksandr, please here. Sheila, thank you. Thank you very much. Kate, you here?
Thanks.
Jan. Jaakko, that's right. Thank you. Wow, what a presentation. We have a distinguished panel to continue the conversation on security, perhaps in less dramatic circumstances. Yeah. Although if we start with you, Jaakko, you're the Chief Security Officer for Elisa, the well-known Finnish operator, and you made a front page of newspapers for said reasons. Can you explain a bit what happened?
Yes, of course. As we have heard quite many times during this event, that the security situation has changed during these last 2 years, and we also had our own part on that, and because Elisa is the owner of the submarine cable that was broken in the Baltic Sea. And if I may elaborate that a bit more, in terms of cable operator, that was just an ordinary event, as we have. Anchors tend to break cables, fishing tends to break cables, and volcanic areas, volcanic activities is breaking the cables. But during these times, we cannot rule out malicious actions also. And like in this time there's strong suspicions on malicious actions. Then in terms of fixing the problem, it was quite straightforward. Cable engineering, take the ship close to the cable, lift it up, fix it and get away. Except there's a storm going, so that caused some delays. The other part that required cooperation with authorities, with criminal investigation and others, it was a different story. And there I want to emphasize the role of cooperation and trusted information sharing, because we had really good relations with both Finnish and Estonian regulators and other authorities in managing the case.
Jaakko, how many days did it take for the cable to be repaired? And you noted there was a storm. So.
Yeah, this time the cable was broken at October 8th, and it was finally fixed at October 24th. But if we had different kind of weather conditions, that would have taken some days, provided that the ship that made the replacement or fixed the broken cable would have been available like it was.
Yeah.
And there I want to emphasize one thing is that as a player who has been building international networks for a long time, that cable broken cable didn't have any effect on any services, because there was redundancies, enough capacity, and other ways. So, in terms of services, it was kind of no news. But from other perspectives, it was quite important, and I understand the high media coverage on the case.
Yeah, a dimension that on which you drew my attention when we spoke was that this is a cable that was linking two member states.
Yeah.
Finland, Estonia, and of course it crosses international waters, whatever that means, and there is no way to police. So can you elaborate a bit on that? I naively thought you could send the Finnish police to chase any ships cutting your cable, but that's not so complicated.
Yeah, that's
not so easy.
Now I'm on a bit on my weak areas, because there's a maritime law that governs the actions that can't.
We don't need the details, just
there, but like the ship that was thought to be reason for that break, it traveled from St. Petersburg to China, and it traveled on the international waters. So the only means that authorities they were just able to call with a radio. But apparently the captain was so busy that he didn't have any time to respond for the calls.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But, okay, thank you, Jaakko. Let's move to now a completely different perspective on security. This is compared to our debate, Camilla. Security is a much more diverse aspect, and we now move to Kate. Kate, you're a researcher at the University of Utrecht, and you look at security in perhaps a less dramatic, although we will see, less dramatic aspect, which is how we as users, we perceive corporate policies on security. So what do you do to find out about that?
Well, thanks a lot for having me. Well, it's very important to talk to you, people that know a lot about telecoms. And today I would like to talk about the most important thing in cybersecurity, about the role of people. So we talk about tools and technologies a lot, but let's take a moment and think about how we as individuals, what kind of role we play in securing our digital systems. And I often hear that people, they're seen as a weakest link in security systems. So what do you think about it? Do you agree with this statement? Can you raise your hand? Like, if you're supporting...
Are humans the weak links in security systems? So engineers do a perfect job, Jan agrees. Jan, you agree, yeah, I see that. And we are the problem. I see Tonko, the board of BEREC agrees, and so does Connect. Thank you, Camilla, for voting. Some agreement on that.
I'm glad that I don't see a lot of hands in the air, but I hope after
the one that
panel,
matters were raised. That's what I see, you know.
Well, I hope after this panel I will be able to convert them and increase the score of supporters that humans are actually not a problem. They can be a part of the solution in cybersecurity. So, but let's first to look into cybersecurity systems. So, they're in essence socio-technical systems. So they consist of the several components like people, technology, and processes. And this, well, if you look into a more detailed level, they also include additional factors like governance practices, regulators' perspective as well, and how organizations function. So, and how these factors come, they relate to each other, how they come into play. So, if we look then, what is the place of people in this socio-technical system? So, they're in the center using technologies in order to get the things done, like work for organizations. And they're surrounded by the processes who basically put in place in order to restrict any possible problems or unwanted behavior. So, in essence, if we look from the outside in, people in the center doing something bad. So, and we need to have processes in order to limit the possible damage. So, to limit also the work. So, but how it basically manifests in reality. So, for example, if we look into, we hear a lot about the data breaches, and if we see that some hacker exploits a software vulnerability, then we tend to blame IT people for not getting systems up to date and secure. Or if somebody clicks a phishing link, then we say, well, they weren't not so attentive and they click this link. But yeah, so it's very easy to blame people and to point finger at what kind of malicious behavior they might be a part of. So we see people as a main roadblock for cybersecurity protection. But what if we can see a different perspective? What if we change it and see people as a part of the normal working process? So that they're not only making mistakes, but they also doing the work in the organization. In this sense, well, the alternative perspective, they acknowledge that people tend to make errors, but in many cases, they just a part of the normal working process. So by putting these restrictions and limiting cases when they can make an error, we also limiting the normal working process. And then, well, we excluding them basically from securing our organization. Mm-hmm. So what if we look at the people as a part of the, how they can be a part of our organizational security force and actually contribute to the improvement of organizational security protection and normal working process. Indeed, we have some extraordinary conditions and to have crises. But if we will live with this feeling of the constant crisis, we won't be able to do normal things, normal processes. And how we can learn more about the people and the role into cybersecurity. So speaking from my experience and from my research, I'm mostly interested in learning about mental models of people that they have about security technologies and systems. So how they understand the technologies that they actually use. So one of the projects that were recently published looked into how experts and non-experts in corporate environment see the VPN technology. And they found an interesting...
Which technology? I didn't get
VPN.
it. VPN, yeah.
So I believe you're using it
yes.
From time to time at least. So the differences between these two groups can bring more understanding how people in finance department, for example, or in HR, how they understand, like people completely with no security experience, how they understand this technology, what kind of perception and concerns they have about using this technology also for their personal privacy. That if a company, for example, monitoring traffic, then what are the incentives for them to use VPN more regularly? So sometimes they can switch it off and forget about it. So, and by learning from these mental models, security professionals and management can better understand how to adjust security measures, security training, and also how to improve the risk communication within the organization and at a high level probably, in order to support employees in becoming more resilient and participate in cybersecurity activities and contribute to a normal functioning of the organization.
Thank you, Kate. Ian, I saw you disagreeing with the statement that humans are the weak link in this security chain. And actually, we had a drink last night with Ian, and he said some pretty devastating statement about this industry, but I'll let you repeat that if you wish.
I don't know, you have one glass of wine with this man. You all know what happened, right? It's all him. Right, Kate did manage audience participation, so I'm going to have a go. Right, imagine, thought experiment before we start talking security. You're at home, you're just about to redo your fixed broadband at home. 2 ISPs turn up at your door. First one turns up and goes, "Hi, we are the secure ISP. Yeah, we're 10 euros a month more expensive than our competitors, but here is a beautiful 60-page book that explains how we secure the MPLS-PE nodes that serve the OLT in your house. Here is how we protect our management plane so that you know that your stuff is secure with us." The second ISP turns up and goes, "Hi, free Netflix. Hands up if you buy number 1. Hands up if you buy number 2. That's the problem with security in telecoms, right? Nobody pays for security, nobody. We've said for the last, 6 hours.
May I just ask, Oleksandr, whether the vote would have been different in Kiev? Because in the room here, I don't know what you saw, but most people went for Netflix. What would it be if you had to make a guess in Kiev? Would people be sensitive, or would they still go for Kiev? Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
What would the answer have been 2.5 years ago?
Well, I think in every country, the customer preferences are very similar, and most of people, would choose. They don't understand. If it's a regular, citizen, he doesn't understand, security and so on. And the free Netflix is a killer in terms of customer propositions. The difference is people learn, unfortunately, only when it hurts.
Yeah. Yes.
So.
Thank you. Over to you, Jan. Sorry for
I will get you a drink later because that was a brilliant segue. So we've talked about safe, secure, resilient networks. We haven't defined what any of those terms mean, right? How many of you in the room, before Oleksandr's talk, were thinking about protecting yourselves against, for example, the Russian state turning its entire might on you to take down your telecoms networks? Anybody? No.
We do.
Fair.
You're close enough.
Good neighbors,
And an anchor. The point is, until something bad happens, you don't know how to put this into context. I think your advice about everybody should think about the worst possible case is absolutely right. The UK suffered an attack by the Russians in 2017, 2018. It's still on the NCEC website, the details of what happened. That kicked off a huge piece of work in the UK that led to the Telecom Security Act. Right? The Telecom Security Act is a different way of trying to regulate telecom security. I mean, the clue's in the name, right? I'll get there. But what do we mean by resilient? What are you resilient against? Do you want to be resilient against somebody driving a truck into a metro node? Or do you want to be resilient against the Russians coming after you? They're different things, and they have different costs. What do we mean by secure? So most people think about espionage. That's probably it. James Bond. Yeah? That's what most people think about when you think security. As we get more and more interesting communication paths, more and more interesting uses of these things, you start to get really interesting security things. So for example, and nobody would ever do this, imagine that your autonomous vehicles are all subject to control by roadside infrastructure, right? Nobody's ever going to do this. Please, nobody let this happen. Imagine then what happens if an attacker gets into your network and just starts delaying packets. Right, today, jitter around latency is not a security thing. Will it be a security thing in 5 years? How do we code for that? How do we understand those threat models today so we can build better networks? In all of this, incentives are what matter. Incentives really matter. So regulatory incentives. So how do you build regulation that drives the right behavior that you need long term? And in some cases, how do you pay for that? Is it fair to ask a telco to defend themselves against the Russian military? Would you do that if it was missiles? Please, oh, British Telecom, defend yourself against Russian missiles. That's an idiotic thing to say. How do I get them to understand how to defend themselves, but also make it commercially viable? Commercial incentives really matter. We were talking about diversity of equipment supply when DG Viola was talking, right? The thing that's holding that back is not technology. The technology is trivial. The thing that's holding that back is lawyers. Sorry to any lawyers in the room. It's patents. How do you license the patents from the incumbents so that you can build a 5G network or a 5G component? That's the sort of thing that we need to sort out. That's not a technical security thing, but it holds back technical security. And then security incentives really matter. Hands up if you know what SS7 is. That's more than I expected, actually. SS7 still is the international signaling system for telecoms. It was designed in the 1970s. It is a bag of spanners, which is a very technical description. If we cared, we would have turned it off 10 years ago.
It generates MTRs. It generates mobile termination rates.
It does a whole bunch of stuff.
It's a good thing.
The big reason why we don't turn it off, because there's money behind it. From a security point of view, it's terrible. How do we build the right incentives, commercial incentives, to get people to do the secure thing? And then finally, details matter. Details really matter. So when we talk about secure, resilient, safe, high quality, we need to understand what that means. I take offense, personal offense, at the word trusted vendors, because I don't trust anybody. I admit I'm a paranoid lunatic, but you shouldn't trust anybody in security. They're trustworthy. They're not trying to damage me, but I shouldn't trust them. If I trust them, I don't check what they do, and that's where security problems come. My very, very final thing is when you think about those details, you get into some really interesting thought experiments. So I used to work in the British government. I used to run the NCEC's technical department. That was where all of that came from. Now I'm at Amazon. I've been at Amazon for a year. I thought I understood scale when we were doing the Telecom Security Act. Nah. Now I understand scale. And I'll tell you something. If you're trying to build a really resilient network, having multiple failure modes is a real positive. And so if you take traditional telcos and you build all the resilience models we can think about, you were just talking about the resilience of when that cable got cut, right? We had diverse routing. If you take that and you extend it out into a hyperscaler's cloud, you can do some genuinely impressive resilience stuff. And that kind of statistical and mathematical modeling behind that is what's going to make us safer in the future, not talking about safe, secure, resilient without defining it. Rant over.
Thank you, Ian. Sheila, you head of security at ILR, the Luxembourg telecom regulator, but also security regulator. I mean, listening to Oleksandr and other speakers, when you work with your fellow telco operators in Luxembourg, what sort of extreme scenario do you model, you know, to see whether your operators are doing the right thing? Are you imagining extreme cases like a major Russian attack, or is that, you know, too far-fetched and you know, something to consider in the future, without revealing secrets, of course?
So I think that there are many things that could be said here, and I really find your story about Netflix and secure telcos really interesting. And I think that there are a lot of incentives already out there. We don't usually go there and tell them yet what scenarios to take into account. But one of the major steps is already within NIS2, which is coming soon. There it's actually one of the biggest changes between NIS1 and NIS2 is that the decision needs, and the security measures need to be approved by the CEO. And that also implies that they need to have training in order to understand the risks, and not on a technical level, but to understand what is going to be the impact if I take the decision to put money and human resources in this level or in this field. And I have to assume then the consequences of it if I did not put the efforts into the right spot. And I think that makes also the whole NIS2 is basically the idea that you don't have to choose between the operators with Netflix and not Netflix, but that all of your operators will treat first your data securely, but also that they will provide a resilient environment. And especially in scenarios, what was mentioned before in the keynote by Oleksandr, is that you have to basically take into account the worst case scenario and hope for the best, but be prepared. Be prepared. And it does not mean to be, or need to be like a Russian attack, but it can be just a flood, like you said. There can be many scenarios, but you just have to, try to be resilient, and you can never have 100% security, but put your efforts in the right spots and make an analysis and see where you want to invest in the future.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Perhaps to pick up on one of your points, Sheila, which is that the NIS2 puts the spotlight on the C-level. You know, it's not anymore the IT guys at the end of the corridor that are guilty if something goes wrong, but, you know, the guy in pinstripe suit have to take their responsibility. How, Kate, you're the human factor into this. You talked about the humble users, you know, the rest of us here dealing with security, you know, double authentication and so on. But have you worked on the C-level guys? You know, do they have any attention spans for these unnecessary expenses that brings no return?
Well, I heard some stories. And
we're in the business of taking risk. Why not take this one as well? So how do you deal with that?
No, I think this NIS2 change is for good, because I heard a lot of stories from CISOs and ISOs that they struggle to get the board involved in cybersecurity. And also, if we look at security budgets, that they are much lower. It's just a tiny part of the bigger IT budget. So I hope this will change this situation or slightly improve and help CISOs to get more room, let's say, to secure organizations. Yeah. I'm looking forward, and also
before giving it to you, Jaakko, what is your perception on in Finland in particular? Have you seen a change and the C-level in telecom operators being more ready to spend money on security?
In our industry, at least on the major companies, there has been readiness to invest on security. If I elaborate that a bit more, because in telecoms, the customer trust is one of the key assets you have. And one of the ways to protect your customer trust is to ensure that you are not involved in any incidents that get public. Naturally, there are the damages or the sanctions are one. If you have a sanction of 2% of your global revenue, it hurts.
Yeah.
But if I recall time from the GDPR launch, the sanctions were discussed quite widely, but then the like brand topics or customer trust was actually gaining more traction, which I find quite positive in terms of security thinking. Naturally, the companies differ and there are different kinds of ideas, but in terms of like larger telecoms, I see that approach is quite similar.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yeah, Oleksandr and then Ian.
I wanted to add that in our view, and you know, it might be an extreme angle, but it's not really even about the C-level or CEOs. Think about, you know, the example about Netflix. It's not really, you know, about customer watching Netflix anymore. You know, we are the country that pride itself on, you know, we have this, you know, Ministry of Digital Transformation. We have all things digital. We have, you know, your passport, your driver's ID, all on your smartphone. You know, and the government in the smartphone is the theme. But what happens if the networks are not there? You know. So if you're a government or you're a country or even you're a citizen that is voting in a government that is pursuing digital agenda, this security, this is an intrinsic element of that, because you can't allow digital anything if you don't have security in place. It's not, you know, so I would take it a bit further. You know, it's a responsibility of those who are running the country to make sure that the citizens in a crisis are capable of using, you know, key basic public services.
That's exactly right. So that's exactly right. My challenge to you is that those telecoms operators went from being, as you move to digital government, they go from being a convenience to being your critical backbone for your interaction with your citizens. Did you pay them? Did you help them secure their networks in a way that commercially, before you did that, there wasn't any need to do that?
Well, you don't have to pay them if you create regulatory conditions that make them make enough money, huh?
Yeah. Same thing. But my point, what I meant at the start with this Netflix example is exactly that. You know, we expect telcos to do things that are not natural for any commercial entity. And I think the NIS2 stuff is either going to be exceptionally brilliant or a catastrophe. And I think it would be one of the two.
In what sense?
So because you're now into fiduciary responsibility for the C-level, right? And they're going to make decisions. And those decisions, hopefully, will all be aligned. You get everything aligned in the right way. You know, they spend the money, they do the security, they get regulatory positivity, and everybody's happy. There are less happy paths for that. And we went through something similar in the UK a few years ago. I don't know if we've got it right. Time will tell. Right? But in terms of getting one throat to choke in an operator, I think that's absolutely critical.
Yeah. So what's the conclusion? We obviously, with the Netflix story, we cannot trust consumers to vote with their wallet for security. Forget that. We have doubt on whether the C-level would voluntarily do it beyond a certain point. So what Oleksandr was saying was calling for a very strong regulatory intervention. Is this where we're going? Or?
Can I,
yes.
Can I start? So look, I'm going to say something unpopular, right? If I haven't done already. I think you, the regulators, need to be crystal clear what you expect, right? Tell the operators exactly what you expect in detail. What scenarios do you expect them to cope with? How do you expect them to cope? What's the recovery time? Oleksandr's example of the SIM cards. How much do you want? Pick a number, right? At some point, that's going to go beyond what is commercially viable in the regulatory framework you have today. And then there's going to be a gap. And identifying that gap and being honest about it and saying how we're going to close that gap, I think is the only way to make this sustainable.
Shall we first go to Sheila, and then to you, Jaakko. But Sheila, Is this how, and from what you hear of your colleagues in other security regulators across the European Union, do you think that this level of guidance that Ian is calling for is delivered by regulators at this stage, or is it something that will be delivered in the future?
Well, I think this is kind of a top-down approach, and I don't really like it. In my experience and in my view, it is more important to take them on board and do these guidance together. And that's exactly also how we do it in ILR. We want to have a collaborative approach, engage operators in information exchange, creating an environment where they feel that they can share also incidents that they don't need to hide, because hiding incidents could have a more reputational impact afterwards. Yeah. So it's really about putting them, because like the operators have the experience. They know their networks, they know their assets, they know their equipment, and they know what they can do. So, and if you have all of them together in one place, you can actually you get a quite honest. Yeah.
But in terms of telling the operators for what catastrophic scenario they should be ready, you know?
Yeah.
There may be extreme case where, you know, a meteorite falling on Luxembourg, maybe that's not, you know, that's not something that you will bother with. So in other words, to be a bit precise in terms of operators, it's your network, it's a bit of a black box, fine.
No, it's not that what I meant.
Okay,
what I meant is really that we are together defining the scenarios. Yeah. So that they can create their input. Okay. You know, like it's only because like we can, of course we can come up with ideas and telling them you have to have X SIMs by side in case of something happens, but that's not going to be productive. Like the operators need to understand also why they are doing this. Yeah. So putting them together and talking with them, creating the scenarios together, giving them, of course, guidelines, but that's going to be more on a feedback perspective and not just like a top-down approach. Yeah.
Jaakko, do you get enough guidance from the security regulator in Finland?
To be honest, I couldn't agree more with you, because the collaborative approach is the way to go, especially when you're defining specific measures for securing things. And I can say that we have enough dialogue, we have enough support, and we can discuss also on difficult issues, and I believe that that's one of the ways to go, because industry has, or practitioners in the industry, they know their networks, as you said, they know their kind of boundaries on what you can do and what you can't do, while a regulator has a bit different viewpoints on that. And for example, in Finnish emergency powers acts, there are some powers that government can order, and some of those powers are in a way that if they are used wrongly, you actually destroy your networks, because there are quite strong powers, and that way. And I have the other point on the other industries who are customers of telecoms, and NIS2 is good. There's a risk-based approach. And that enables also other industries to identify critical points where they want to invest, because telecoms, for example, backup connections, it's quite straightforward topic. But there are places you don't need them, places where they can take whatever it takes to fix something. And then there are some places like, for example, hospital, where you have to have ongoing connections, you have to have ongoing systems in order to ensure that patients can be treated. So the risk-based approach and collaboration also with other industries is I think it's key factor. And the last point, if you let me tell you, exercises is good. It's a good way for fostering collaboration, testing your means, testing your ways of doing, and
maybe you can explain the blue and the red team. What do you do with that?
We are actually last week started a large major exercise in Finland. We have more than 650 participants from 180 companies. Then, in addition to that, we are having participants from the government on different ministries, different authorities, and also from defense and law enforcement. There now we are having in the phase that we are building like knowledge and common idea, but in October we are having the active phase where we have those teams are organized as blue teams that are simulated companies, and then we have a red team that's attacking. It consists of criminals and also state-level attackers.
Which team did you play, Jaakko?
I'm playing on the red team.
I knew you were a bad guy. Yeah. Thank you.
But I'd like to promote exercises. They are excellent ways of ensuring that you can speak on the same vocabulary, and naturally, if something happens, it's much easier to call somebody if you know him or her.
Yeah. Sheila, is this a practice that is common among your colleagues across Europe, the idea of organizing this sort of a blue team, red team games, you know?
Yeah, there are at different levels, there are different type of exercises. I mean, at NATO level, there's more typical like the red and blue teaming, or ENISA is organizing every 2 years an exercise. But also tabletop exercises are important to check the procedures. So that's pretty common, and we do that too with the operators.
Thank you. Ian, I was intrigued by something you said earlier, provocative statement as usual. You said technology is trivial, intellectual property rights are the problem. Did I get that right? Or?
For market diversification in radio networks, yeah.
So can you just take me by the hand and make it even a bit clearer?
Look at the 3GPP standards. Look at the ETSI standards. For everything that's in there, someone has contributed that piece of technology. And they've contributed it with a requirement that they will license the technology, the underlying technology, on a fair, reasonable, and non-discriminatory basis, so FRAND. And that means that it doesn't have to be the same for everybody, but you have to be able to defend how you license your patents. 90-something% of 5G patents are owned between Nokia, Ericsson, Huawei, ZTE, Samsung, and InterDigital, I think. So those 6 companies, they all trade. So they say, well, you can use mine if I can use yours. Right? If I want to turn up, you know, Ian's Honest Base Stations wants to set up and build a new entrant, how do I know who I have to license something from? I've got nothing to trade. So I've now got to invest huge amounts of money, potentially, in an unknown set of risks to understand which patents I have to license to build this widget. Right? The industry is completely opaque at the moment. We need to open it up so that I can come in and go, right, I want to build a lo-fi coder. I need that patent, that patent, that patent, and that patent, and it should cost me about this much. Because then you can start to build a sensible commercial model.
Okay, that's, thank you. Kate, I would like, I see the clock is moving. I hate to stop this debate. It's fascinating, you know. But at some stage, we need to hand over to Robert. Kate, many of us in the room perhaps have responsibility for security and are wondering how to improve awareness among our colleagues. If we follow your theory that the human factor is the weak link, what is your, you've done a number of surveys, lots of interviews. What are the best practices that you have seen? The thing where, that's the way to do it. This is how, you know, you create the awareness and make your colleagues security aware and not clicking on stupid links. I mean, I'm sure you know what I mean. We all face these sort of problems on a weekly basis. So, any silver bullets?
Well, Philippe, I have bad news for you. There is no silver bullet for this.
So disappointing.
Like, the CISO of our university very upset with the result of the mailing campaign that they have. Only 8 or 9% of reach out to employees of university. So even us not going so great. And you see security awareness as a kind of golden goose or cure for any security problems. Yeah. But think about how, from technological perspective, you can help users to behave, like do good security behavior, So what security professionals, how they can design security in the way that is more usable, and people, they won't be so needed for spotting these links. So how we can think about, more technical solutions. So don't see cyber awareness as a part like of the, securing 100% of your organization. Also, security is not a part of working responsibilities of employees in the organization. Why are you making them be alerted and work as a spam filter, or what kind of reason do you have for this? So we need to start maybe earlier and educate people about security practices. We need to do something now at the organizational level, indeed, but we need to also think about future, so how our kids will use security and technology. So what they will learn about security practices and good behaviors, how they build these habits. I think now it's important.
Thank you, Ted. That will be the word of the end. I'm so sorry to kill such a nice, interesting debate. Please join me in thanking our panelists. Thank you.